First, we'll hit record, and then we're going to do that promo that I talked to you about.
Okay.
So that sounds something like hi. Oh, wait, you have to teach me how to pronounce your last name.
Yeah, it's Dake.
What? Is it really Dake?
Dake.
Dake.
Yeah.
Dake.
Yeah.
See, I was saying Dihake.
Yeah, close. I've heard it butchered so many places. So
I've heard people say like dank. And I was like, I hope that's not it. So Dake, am I saying it right?
Dake, right. Yep, that's perfect.
Dake. Okay. See, I was almost there. Because you've got two Japanese syllables.
You were very close.
Yeah, Dake. Okay. So Anita Dake.
Yep, that's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So it'll sound something like, hey, this is Anita Dake from thepowerofthrift.com. Huzzah. And you are listening to Jeff Smith on Vroom Vroom Beer. Huzzah! Or something like that. That's where we're going.
Okay.
Lots of huzzahs and your URL and whatever else you want to say. Something like that.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, take one.
Wait, sorry. Can you say one more time repeat the phrase I have to say?
Sure.
This is my name.
This is my
Vroom
name.
Vroom.
This is my name. And then your URL.
And my URL, okay.
Right. So this is Anita Dake from thepowerofthrift.com. And you are listening to Jeff Smith on Vroom Vroom Veer. And if you know.
Jeff, what was your last name? I'm sorry.
Smith. Smith.
Jeff Smith.
Yep.
Okay, Jeff Smith at Vroom Vroom. Okay.
Veer. Vroom Vroom Veer.
Vroom Vroom Veer. Okay.
You got it. It's hard to say on purpose. Okay. Anytime you're ready, hit it.
Okay. This is Anita Dake from thepowerofthrift.com, and you're listening to Jeff Smith, Vroom Vroom Veer.
Well done. You got it all. It's perfect.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Cynthia Cummins. Thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hi, Jeff. It's great to talk to you. I'm here. I'm self-isolating at the moment.
Aren't we all?
That's hard for me because I'm a very social person.
Me too.
But at the moment, I'm self-isolating in my dining room with both doors shut. And
do you have other people living with you? Are you isolating from them too?
Yes, I do. I've asked my partner to please go out to the grocery store and look for some toilet paper.
Good luck with that. This is going to be funny as we listen to this years and years in the future. It'll be hilarious, but
I know,
now it's a little scary.
Yeah, people better just check the date here.
Yes,
for Coronavirus Central. Yeah, toilet paper. Good luck finding Purell.
Forget it.
I live just a block or so from Dolores Park, which is a fabulous destination in San Francisco.
Right.
It's very beloved by techie millennials who are here in the city. But it's also a place where you could probably buy just about any kind of drug that you want.
Right.
And I think what they're selling now are like little gram-sized packets of Purell. I don't know. That's a bad joke, but
no, it's not. It's perfect. It's you need humor now more than any other time. They say comedy is tragedy plus time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're skipping over the time part right now because
Right.
it is tragic, but we need to laugh because
Right.
you can't not because you need the relief.
And it's good for your immune system, Jeff. You know
It
that.
is. I do. I am up for laughing the whole show, and for everybody that's not, out there scared from the plague. Let's take a break from all of that and not talk about it for the rest of the show. We got it out of the way, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what you're most excited about at your business over there, or I don't know if this is your business or your blog, but talk about it anyway. Over there at realestatetherapy.org, or your business, as you choose.
Well, realestatetherapy.org is my blog,
Right.
my creative expression around things to do with home and real estate, like looking for the deeper meaning of a real estate transaction.
Right.
But my regular business is called Kindred, and the website there is kindredsfhomes.com.
Got it.
As in Kindred San Francisco Homes. And I've been for 30 years selling residential real estate right here in San Francisco. So that's what my basic business is about.
Gotcha.
What I'm most excited about right now is a completely separate vanity project, a podcast that I'm launching with my friend, Sunny.
Okay.
And that's going to be debuting in, 2 or 3 weeks. It's called The Mocktail Hour. And that's
Sounds
mocktail, not like cocktail, but TALE. It's about sobriety, making sobriety fun. And our mantra is that bad choices make good stories. So
That's so true.
we're going to be talking about our bad choices around drinking from the past. And
That sounds like a good show. I might tune into that. Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. But I'm excited about a lot of things. It's an amazing time to be alive.
It is.
And
Plagues aside. Sorry, I broke the rule.
no, even that.
Yeah.
I've gone through a few rough patches in my life, and the last time where things felt this strange in San Francisco was in 1989, right after the Loma Prieta earthquake. What's interesting to me now is that I'm a lot older, and my relationship to the confusion and angst and upset that's in the air is very different now that I'm older.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost like I don't know about you, but I think I'm trying to stay above it instead of in it. Right. And just pick out the things I want to, I stay abreast, but not get caught up in the emotion, right? The group emotion, so to speak.
Yes, I think that I was listening recently to an interview on a podcast, an interview with Pete Holmes, the comedian.
Right.
Pete Holmes has his own podcast and a new book called God, Sex, Comedy, or Comedy, God, Sex, or something like that.
Okay.
And I think he was quoting Ram Dass maybe or somebody, but he was talking about a little catchphrase, when in doubt, zoom out.
That's a good catchphrase. I like that. Yeah.
And I think that right now, when in doubt, zoom out is one of my guides. And that's very different from what I experienced when I was, in my early 30s and post earthquake.
Yeah. That's a good perspective, I think. I think we can all take a little zoom out.
All right.
I agree. I'm going to keep that one in my back pocket. When in doubt, zoom out. I'm going to put that in the show notes.
All right.
So let's talk a little bit. So this is Vroom Vroom Veer. So that means we have to talk about you, your life, and go back in time and skip around and get those nice transition stories, the Veer stories mostly.
Cool.
So where did you grow up? Did you grow up in San Francisco or did you grow up somewhere else?
Oh no, I grew up so far away from San Francisco. Although the first year or so of my life, I lived in San Francisco because my father was stationed he was in the army and he was stationed at the Presidio in San
Okay.
Francisco. So there's a lot of photos of me at the Golden Gate Bridge, at the Palace of Fine Arts, in the
Uh-huh.
Japanese Tea Garden, you
Nice.
name it.
Yeah.
I was there, but I don't remember it.
Right.
I grew up down in Appalachia, in Southwest Virginia, which is, the part of Virginia that's further west than West Virginia,
Right.
down in coal mining region. And my parents were teachers, and that's where we lived until I was about 9 or 10.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Now I don't know much about that part of the country, but I would when I think of that part of the country, I think South. Does it feel like the South?
Oh yeah, it's the
Okay.
South. But you might also think about something like Deliverance. Ning, 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 ning.
You got a pretty mouth. That one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't want to go there without you with me. Okay.
That's okay. I'm with you.
Okay. So, what sort of childhood was that? Were you running around in the woods a lot when you were young?
Oh, definitely. That was really idyllic childhood in so many ways. My both sets of grandparents lived nearby, and they both had farms.
Oh, that's
And
great. Yeah.
so, but more importantly, there was really great access to the woods and the mountains and
Yeah.
streams. And so I learned how to swim in a river, in the Holston River in
Nice.
Virginia.
Uh-huh.
I got to climb trees and work in the garden. I mean, work. I put that in quotation marks.
Okay. Okay. Air quotes work.
And I had a beloved uncle who was sort of like the Pied Piper. He was at my grandmother's house most of the time. And, me and my cousin Kathy, we'd just follow him everywhere while he told us stories about, the plot of Betty Davis movies. And
Sounds like fun.
Right. It was just an enchanting childhood. It was beautiful.
So that was little Cynthia up until 9. So I grew up in Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
So there's lots of woods up there. There's more trees than people up there too,
Lot more mosquitoes too.
Way more mosquitoes. Oh yes. Oh my goodness. I've got so many mosquito stories. It's not even funny. But yeah, so we had something similar, culturally different, but similar childhoods. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time camping with my family. We didn't have to go very far, maybe like a 30-minute drive, and it was almost like every weekend in the summer. And then when you in Michigan, the weather in the winter is so awful. You just don't ever want to be inside when the weather's nice.
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but
Oh no, I got that. I mean, growing up back in Virginia in the South, there were times in the summer when you didn't want to be outside either.
Right,
You'd want to be just lying quietly on your bed in a dark room with the cold washcloth on your forehead.
yeah, I'm getting some of that now. I live in Vegas, so
Right.
I know what it is. Yeah, Vegas is too hot in the summer. Yes. So I get that. But at least Vegas is a dry heat.
Yes.
Not that really matters. I mean, it's still oppressively hot, but at least, you're not sweating. So I lived in Panama City while I was in the Air Force for a while. Right.
I love Panama City.
I love Panama City too, but it's really muggy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, in the summertime, and I had this gigantic yard when I lived in base housing that I was responsible to. I had to take care of that yard.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was getting up at like god awful early just to beat the heat and get that done.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, with your machete, right? Chopping down the jungle that was growing in the back.
Not that
I'm
bad,
ju-
but
I'm
close.
kidding. Right. Like, oh, look, last night, a bunch of tropical
growth.
plants. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. So where did you move at around 9 years old?
When I was 10, we moved up to Northern Virginia, and we lived just outside Washington, D.C. for about 3 years.
Okay.
This was the late 60s, early 70s. And so that was interesting because there was a lot of strife going on in Washington. There were all the civil rights marches.
Right.
This was when we lived there was when Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were assassinated. There was a lot of stuff going on. And that was interesting to be living so close to the nation's capital at that time.
Yeah, right.
And we would spend our weekends going into the Smithsonian museums, a lot of time looking at art, a lot of time looking at historical objects.
Sure.
So that we were there for 3 years. And then we moved to the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, which is kind of farm country.
Okay. So that's when you're
in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
You're about high school age by then.
Yes.
Getting close anyway. Okay.
Yeah. Now we're at high school.
So what was your high school experience like? Did you fit one of those Breakfast Club category kids? That's one of my favorite questions.
Yeah. The Breakfast Club. Well, I think like most people, I was trying to figure out what club did I belong to.
Right.
I know I was in a club for what felt like one, in that my mother taught at the junior high school, and the junior high school and the high school were on the same campus together.
Okay.
And my father was the head football coach and athletic director at the high school.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot of baggage for a kid.
Yeah.
You got both parents at school with you.
Yeah. And particularly my daddy, who was known as Coach. Right. And who was, this is Virginia. This is the South, where football
is like
really,
religion. Yes.
Exactly. And
not as bad as Texas, but maybe close. I don't know.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. Okay.
And so he was revered and feared and admired, and
probably a little hated.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
But,
right.
But the net effect of that was that I actually didn't figure out until many years later, like really maybe just about 15 years ago. I finally understood why no boy ever asked me out on a date.
I get it.
Right. But
that feared, respected. Yes.
At the time,
right.
I thought it was about me.
Of course.
Something wrong with me.
Right. No, I get that. That would mess with your head. So did that sort of like contribute to a little bit of rebelliousness on your part, or the opposite, or what sort of kid did you not like having both parents around?
I think that it contributed to a certain amount of duplicitousness or deviousness.
I like that. Oh yeah. All right. You're my kind of person. All right. Sneakiness. I love sneakiness. Yes.
Right. I needed to be a really good girl. And I was a really good girl. Excellent student, a really accomplished musician and actress, anything to do with the arts.
Nice.
I excelled at. I was a really good writer, very creative, but there was also the part of me that wanted to, make out with boys and experiment with various things. And
sure.
I had to be really good at keeping that on the down low.
Sure.
I was really smart about that.
Yeah.
I became a really adept at
Getting away with
hiding.
it.
Yeah, hiding
Hiding
little
it.
secrets.
Right. I did too. So I don't know what your story or where you developed or how you developed those skills, but for me, and this is just a guess, but so I was like the youngest of three siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So my sister was 6 years older than me, and my brother was 3 years older than me, and that made me the baby, and therefore,
Right.
the baby treatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from my perspective, even now, what I was doing was I was watching my two older siblings doing everything I wanted to do. That was,
Mm-hmm.
air quotes bad,
Right.
and getting caught, right? And then
Right.
going, oh, okay, I can do those things. I just have to avoid that where they tripped up and got caught, right?
Right. Right.
Right. So it was like I had these two bad examples in front of me of how, okay, these are fun. You can do those things. You just have to be careful.
Right.
and really sneaky. Yes. So
Mm-hmm.
so how did you was it just because you knew the spotlight was on you that you were like, okay, I have to keep up the appearances and I want to get away with it? or how do you think, you came up with these devious plans to have your cake and eat it too, so to speak?
Well, well, I wanted to get straight A's, and I wanted to
Right.
be
You
seen a
wanted all of
certain
those
way.
things. Right.
And I also wanted to live into that. I wanted to play music, and I enjoyed school.
Okay.
But at the same time, I really hoped to fit in. I think
Sure.
that, but any of my impulses that didn't fit in with that good girl image felt bad, like they were bad things.
Sure.
In retrospect, they weren't necessarily bad things.
No.
I think that here's what was the hardest part for me was that at home, I would hear at the dinner table pretty much what my parents knew about everybody at school.
Right.
And because of my father's position, he knew who smoked pot. He knew who was truant. Right. He knew all of that.
Yes.
And so, heaven forbid I would want to associate with any of those kids who were some of the cool kids.
Right.
And
okay, so you were kind of getting some intel that not all kids had access to.
Right. And I remember there was one boy who I obsessed about for about a year. I was just crazy about him.
Right.
He was on the football team, and I was totally in love with him from a distance of, a whole classroom away.
Sure.
And at the dinner table, my father saying that so-and-so, if he was any dumber, right? I forget what the phrase was, but he
Right.
basically was just saying how stupid this boy was. And I thought to myself, you're right. He is dumb as a stick, but I love him. And that was just a weird thing to have to live with.
No, I get it. Yeah. It's hilarious. It's like, I get it because it's like, yeah, but he's so gorgeous and he's cool.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. But it takes a lot to get that perspective, and I think just listening to me, I don't know, obviously, but on a guess for my part is you cared about not screwing up your future. Right.
Yes.
And that was where that sort of like, that was tempering those urges to screw around, right? So you were like,
definitely.
I have to keep this in. I don't want to screw it up, right? So you want to have fun, but you're not going to go off the rails, right?
Nothing reckless. I think
right.
I mean, the most prime example would have been, I was no dummy. I saw what happened to the girl who showed up pregnant in school,
right,
or suddenly left school,
right.
And there was no way that I would ever be to the point where I would make a mistake like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
And then, even not even so drastic, but just like, it would have been, horrible for you to get caught with like any of the substances, right? That would have been like death.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I mean, you're still going to do it.
Right.
But you're taking extreme measures to make sure that you're keeping that all in a box and you're going to stay safe, right? I was doing the same thing. I was never the kid that would be like going off the rails on a Sunday night. Right. Because I knew I had to go get it together. Right. And so I think, yeah, right. So it's like, I don't know where these things come from. I just got lucky, I think. It's just like, because not everybody gets that sort of, a lot of people learn these lessons the hard way. It's like,
yes,
they're showing up to school drunk. Not a good place to be, and then there's consequences to that, so for whatever reason, we both lucked out. Okay. So moving on. So was there college there or no?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I went to West Virginia University for a year.
Okay.
I was a music major, a piano major there.
Nice.
And
sounds like fun.
But yeah, I was a mountaineer for a year. But while I was there, I met a boy and fell in love with him. He wasn't in college. And I don't know, through some convoluted way of thinking, I decided, first of all, that I hated practicing the piano 4 hours a day. So music wasn't for me.
Okay.
I had this vague idea that I would like to be on TV as a journalist.
Okay.
So I transferred to Virginia, to Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, that at the time had and still has one of the best journalism schools in the country. And so I transferred there, and my boyfriend moved to Richmond also, so that we could be near each other. And so now I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and going to a big public university, majoring in journalism.
All right. That's kind of a big shift, but okay. So did you end up finishing that degree, or did something else come up before that?
I did finish that degree, and it turned out it was a pretty nice education because it was well-rounded. I took a lot of different classes, and for the most part, I really enjoyed school. And so I graduated with a degree in print journalism. And my grades had been so good that somebody said, you should go to law school. So I took the LSATs, I applied to law schools, and I was accepted at quite a few schools. And after graduating, I was supposed to go to William and Mary Law School, but I decided to defer for a year.
Good idea.
Mm-hmm.
You get a break. Maybe go to Europe or something. I don't know.
Well, instead, I just hung around Richmond and tended bar for a while. And then I ended up back home tending bar for a little while, where I met this Austrian ski instructor at the little ski resort where I was working.
Wow.
And then he and
Sounds exciting.
I know.
Okay.
He was kind of not the nicest guy ever, but he was pretty exotic.
Right.
And had this great accent, if you like that kind of thing.
Sure. I get it.
And then he and I ended up traveling out west, where from his Austrian ski school days, he had met all sorts of people, clients and colleagues. And he and I went out west and we skied all over Colorado, Idaho, Utah. We worked our way up to Washington and just had a great time skiing.
And love that downhill skiing.
In fact, I was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, when Mount St. Helens blew up.
Whoa. Whoops.
Yeah. With my Austrian ski instructor boyfriend.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds scary.
It was weird.
Were you on the mountain or just in town?
I was about, I don't know, a couple hours drive to the east
Okay.
of the volcano.
Gotcha.
And we had just rented a little apartment for the summer, and the ash started falling, and
Wow.
like a couple of inches of ash accumulated.
Wow.
And talk about shutting things down.
Mm-hmm.
That shut everything down.
Yeah. I can't imagine what the cleanup was like.
It was not good.
No,
It was not
my
good.
goodness. Yeah.
And in fact, our prospects for spending the summer working at that resort there were ruined.
Went down to
and
nothing.
That's
Yes.
when I went back to Virginia again, and worked as a bartender for another summer in Virginia. And then I moved back out to Sun Valley, Idaho to be a ski bum.
Nice.
And I deferred law school for another year.
Okay. You keep deferring. Okay. I like this. This is good. I like it. I'm not going. I'm just not going yet. Okay.
Right.
Good. Yes. So now you're a ski bum in Idaho. Wow. This is fun. I like this story so far.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. We're having a good time here.
I'm kind of the reluctant ski bum because I was a little bit of a fearful skier.
Okay.
I got to be pretty good, but I think what I really wanted was love and romance and good times.
Adventure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But when we got to Ketchum, Idaho, long story short, my boyfriend started seeing somebody else, so we split up.
Gotcha.
And I got there a little too early in the fall for the restaurant jobs to be available. So I ended up wandering into the local newspaper office, and I got a job as a typesetter.
Whoa.
At the local newspaper.
Okay.
And I had one of the most miserable winters of my life because I would be cocktail waitressing and then typesetting during the day, waitressing at night, missing my home, first Christmas away from Virginia, all alone. My boyfriend just broke up with me. It was pretty awful.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like fun. Typesetting in and of itself does not sound like fun.
Right. But at the end of that, they needed a reporter at the paper.
Aha.
And hey, guess what?
I have a journalism degree.
I had a degree in journalism. So I started working as a newspaper reporter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun. Now that's way better than typesetting and cocktail waitress.
Yeah, for sure.
Or was
For
it
sure.
bartender? I don't remember. Sorry.
I did it all. I cocktail waitressed. I tended bar. I catered.
Gotcha.
I waited tables. You name it.
But now you're a reporter.
Now I'm a reporter, and I'm the junior reporter on this weekly paper, which was sort of the voice they had a liberal viewpoint.
Okay.
In contrast to most of what was going on in Idaho at the time. And, it was a resort town. A lot of celebrities lived there. So there was kind of this Hollywood set there.
Nice.
And as the junior reporter, they would throw stuff at me all the time that other people didn't want to do. And some of it was really great, like going up to the movie set for Clint Eastwood's movie Pale Rider, and writing a photo caption, or
that's great.
Like going to interview the Kingston Trio when they were in town.
Oh, nice.
But then I also had things like the Fish and Game beat, and
that's okay. You can make that fun. The Fish and Game beat, sure.
The Fish and Game beat was really where it was at, because there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Like That was right when Claude Dallas, this famous outlaw, had killed and dismembered two conservation officers in Idaho, and then gone on. There was this massive manhunt. And,
wow.
There were people who would go out and spotlight elk and poach them.
Right. The poachers. Okay.
There was a guy who had like 6 baby wild cats in his station wagon.
Oh, geez.
There were, bears sneaking into homes on the fairways at Sun Valley Resort. That was really fun.
See, good. See, now as soon as you said the fish and wildlife beat, I imagined like when the local fishing tournament came around and somebody got a really big fish.
Right.
But it was way more exciting than that. So that's good.
Well, Jeff, actually, you're not far off, because part of that beat was I would edit the weekly fishing report.
Okay.
And, that may as well have been written in Latin or something, because it would be what fly was being used on what river,
right.
caddis this and whatever.
So if you're not a fly fisherman, it's meaningless to you.
Right. And I'm sure that I totally botched up whatever they were writing, in my attempt to
get covered the beat. Wow. Okay. So that's great. It makes a good story now.
Yeah, it was fun. Those were fun days.
So what was next on the horizon then?
Well, the next thing was that it was a little too much of a party town.
Okay.
And I just felt like I wasn't really going to be able to make a productive life for myself there. And
sounds like it was kind of small towny feel too.
It was a very small towny feel.
Right.
And in my position, I knew as a reporter, again, it was that same thing like I had in high school. Like I knew I would go cover the Planning and Zoning Commission or have an interview with the Sun Valley mayor, but I also knew who all the drug dealers in town were.
Okay. Right.
Just because it was such a small town.
Right.
But anyway, I didn't see myself going anywhere fast there. So I decided to move. And with my boyfriend at the time, we decided to move down to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, which I chose because it was the city, and it also was near a lot of great outdoor recreation, which was important to me. Mm-hmm. And a beautiful place to live.
Yeah. And you had all those pictures of you when you were 1 year old.
That's right.
And you had to go back to those sites.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, cool.
So came to San Francisco. I worked as a communications director for a not-for-profit organization called the Bay Area Dance Coalition, which was a clearinghouse for everything from independent choreographers to San Francisco Ballet. And I worked for them for a while and then did a brief stint at Banana Republic headquarters, which was owned by Gap at the time.
Right.
And that was just a miserable job. Just miserable. I'd never been in a really corporate setting before, and I hated it. But meanwhile, my boyfriend had gotten his real estate license, and he said, and he had barely started, but he said, you know what? If you're going to be miserable, you may as well make some money.
So many people have that epiphany, right? It's like, this is going to suck regardless. Right. You might as well get some money, right? Yeah.
So I kind of reluctantly, I left that job. I got my real estate license, And I started I did some freelance writing,
Okay.
just to make a little money to barely
Right.
survive.
Sure.
And I started working as a residential real estate agent in San Francisco.
Wow.
Um, and
That can't be
when
easy.
oh,
No.
well, no, because I'm not a salesperson,
Really?
and
Wow.
I
Okay.
never have been able to. I couldn't sell Girl Scout cookies.
Right.
As a Girl Scout.
I have that thing too. That like I really, don't ask me to sell anything. Now my wife has got the retail gene. She just loves everything about selling stuff, and I'm mystified, because like
Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm like you don't want me to sell anything. I'm probably the worst persuader on the planet. Anyway, I get it.
Yeah, I just didn't want to do that at all.
Just made
But
you
I
feel
thought,
icky. Yeah.
I'm just going to give it a try. And so what was shocking was the first client I had was somebody looking for a condo. He was moving here from back east. And I was so amazed at how much care and positive regard I had for him. Like, I wanted to help him find the most fabulous home.
Right.
I wanted him to be happy.
Mm.
And so this was new for me, to have this almost motherly kind of regard for somebody.
Okay.
And that was my first sale. And then I thought, you know what? I think I can do this.
Right, because it didn't really feel like you were selling.
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
You had like a sort of like, well, if I look at this like differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not easy.
Yeah. But it is easy. What I know now, what I quickly discovered is, houses sell themselves.
Okay. Right. I get that.
No, there's nothing.
The selling part of a house.
Right.
You're right. You don't, all you really are there doing is what? You describe it, because I could guess, but you're here.
Well, I'm a guide and an ally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an educator, a facilitator. The main thing I'm doing is helping people get clear about what they really want.
Right. Right.
They think they're buying a house.
Right.
What they're really buying is a home, and so much of their identity, their very core, is wrapped up in, there's all these ideas around that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's being brought into fruition.
Right.
It's not 3 bedrooms and a, outdoor space and 1-car parking.
Right. Those are details.
It's a sanctuary. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is home evolves too over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Because I've only owned 2 homes, but
Mm-hmm.
I've had a gajillion addresses.
Yeah.
Right. And it's different, especially when I was active duty Air Force, and that was 20 years of my life. Right. So big chunk of time. And every time you go, and you had some experience, it sounds like, with this, like we would go, and the goal ultimately was to get a house on base. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because then, everything's easier. Okay. Yeah. You have to mow the lawn or shovel snow, but essentially everything's easier. You don't have to deal with the utilities. You don't have to pay a rent. You just show up and throw your crap in there and get on with life.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had this like experience. So when I was stationed in England and I was still active duty, I followed my same pattern, and just immediately, as soon as possible, got into a base housing situation, right? Mm. Which turned out fine. But then, about a year into that assignment, and it lasted, I think, 3 years, I found out that the smart people were actually buying houses and then selling them 3 years later when they left. Okay.
Wow.
And
Wow.
okay, so the market at that time was very positive for that. And so the government was paying the mortgage 100% every month.
Wow.
Okay, right?
That's so cool.
Yes. They would pay your rent too, but if you owned a house, they would pay your mortgage. It doesn't matter, right? It's called basic allowance housing, right? It doesn't, and they don't ask for that equity back. Okay. And
Right.
right. And then the other thing is in England at that time, I don't know what it is now, but the status of forces agreement between US, UK was that all active duty members didn't have to pay any council tax, which is property tax over there. Right. So not only are you living tax free for 3 years property wise, not only are you not really paying in the mortgage,
Right.
when you sold it, you left with like a big chunk of change because there was proceeds. That
Right, 'cause-
again, tax free.
What a great investment.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm kicking myself as I'm leaving England because I didn't do any of that.
Oh no. Oh, Jeff, I'm sorry.
I know. But it put me into this I must buy mode, right? When I moved from England, I went to greater Los Angeles area. And I ended up buying a condo townhouse in a place called Torrance.
Torrance. Wow.
Torrance. Kind
Ooh.
of fancy sounding, if you're familiar. There are edges where people can afford a 2-bedroom, 1,200 maybe-ish square foot townhouse. And that
Right.
was about what I could do, you know. So that was my first home that I purchased. But it was great. I mean, start to finish, the whole thing was a good experience in learning. And, by the way, 2008 happened.
Oh, right.
So that was
I remember that.
Right. But that was my first home, and then I just bought one again here in Vegas last year. So it's a lot of addresses for only 2 purchases.
I hear that that's a great place to be living.
Vegas is awesome.
Yeah.
I like it for a lot of different reasons. It's just because, let's see, I guess first and foremost, we wanted to stay LA close. Because my wife is from Japan, and there's a lot of Japanese stuff like groceries and books and culture and, Buddhist temples. And so she wanted to be close to all of that stuff without actually paying all the taxes. So Vegas is good because, no state tax. So anyway, yeah, it's been a great transition, and now we're living in our great new home and loving it. So yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It was really hard to find I know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but for whatever reason, it's hard to find a smaller space in Vegas. Everybody here, I think most of the people that live here are escapees from Los Angeles area, right? Where you can't afford to get a big house unless you're in the suburbs, right?
Yeah.
And they get here and they're like, oh my God, everything's cheap. So they go big.
Right.
It's not cheap. It's just cheap relative to LA.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's actually, that makes it difficult to find something smallish, but we did. So that was good.
Yay.
Yay. Okay. Sorry. I went off on a tangent.
No,
I stole a bunch of your time.
I love hearing about that.
Yeah. So now you are officially a real estate agent and you're working in San Francisco. So how long have you been doing this?
30 years.
30 years. Oh my goodness.
30 years. Yeah.
Wow.
More than 30 years.
Wow.
Crazy.
And that's a crazy market.
It's a great market. It's very challenging. We're doing real estate at a very high level here.
Right.
And I've been very successful, a top agent for most of that time. And now I have my own agency.
Nice.
But I went through periods of not liking it, and
Sure.
I started a family. I have two children who are now in their 20s, and I had a marriage that ended
Successfully. You ended it
Yes.
successfully.
Very successfully.
You completed it.
very,
Congratulations.
very happy ending, and we're very close friends and still
wow.
family.
Good for you.
And in fact, my ex-husband works at my real estate agency.
Wow. Good for you.
But in the midst of all that, kids and life and stuff, I often found myself in distress about big questions about life. So I began trying to get answers, and that led me down a long path of different forms of self-exploration. And over time, I developed a sloppy Buddhist practice.
Okay. I like that. Those are the best kind of Buddhist practices, the sloppy kind.
Although I'm very attractive to the Zen Soto, is it? I think the Japanese lineage.
Right.
The formality of that. But I started looking for ways to incorporate my writing and my mindfulness practice with my job, my day job.
Right.
And so a lot of what I do nowadays is I figured out how to begin kind of making that part of my real estate practice, was having this zooming out view of what it means to buy and sell real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big mindfulness aspect to that, and by being aware of that, it makes me, I think, better able to serve my clients and really help them progress in their lives.
And it's such an emotional roller coaster ride. Right? Yeah. Every time. It's not like, I think one of my favorite things that I read on your stuff was it's not a transaction. It is a transaction, but it's more truthfully a transition, which I call a veer.
Right.
And you're right. Every time you in a buy or a sell, equally traumatic.
Oh yeah.
And any kind of drama is always better with a whole lot of mindfulness.
Exactly. And if you're lucky, that transition is also a transformation.
Right.
Just as everything falls apart, just when you feel like your house got hit by lightning, right?
Right.
You're in your life is in boxes, and you're closing escrow on your house, and you don't know where you're going next. And
right.
Maybe you're in the middle of a divorce or something. But it's like drawing the death card in the tarot deck. It is.
Yeah. Scary.
It's not a death.
Scary. Right.
It's a beginning. It's an ending, and it's also a beginning, and it can be quite beautiful.
No, that's awesome. You're right. Again, that brings me back to, I think the military for me was such a great, I guess, learning experience, but like very slowly, right? So I actually I remember when my very first assignment, it only lasted 2 years, but it felt like a really long time then. I was 18, between 18 and 20, right? My very first assignment was in Japan.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. And I remember, so I was in this so I had like a very fancy top secret-y clearance, right? Mm-hmm. And where I worked.
Like that is top secret-y.
Yes. But that just meant that the building that I worked in, day out, there were no windows. And it was like you were in this vault, or a series of vaults, right? And it just felt like you were very prison-like every day at work. And as I was like turning in my badge and couldn't get in there anymore ever again, oh my God, it was just so this sense of relief, like, it's over. Thank God.
Right. Right.
And that was sort of like the beginning of liking transitions. That's why I'm bringing that up. Right.
Yeah.
It was an ending, but yay, it's ending.
Right.
Now, of course, there was a sadness about all the friends that I was going away from, but really the overall experience every time was it just got a lot easier every time I left.
Yeah.
And then I had this other little thing that I like to mention is the dwindling of keys in your pocket just started like making me more excited. Right. It was like, I don't have a car anymore. That's 2 keys, right? I had 2 cars. There's 2 keys gone. And eventually you get down to that last key and you turn it over. And then for the next 2 weeks or a month or 3 weeks, until you get to the next base, you're essentially homeless. You know where you're going to land, but you don't have any keys. It feels great. Anyway.
Yeah, there's freedom in that.
Right.
It's scary, but there's freedom in
Correct. Especially when you know where you're going to land. I think military people get excited about it because they're accustomed to it because they do it so often.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody else, I think. Civilians have a lot harder transitions than military people just because the military people, they excel at transitions. They're transitioning like every 2 or 3 years. So,
yeah, one of my clients is a major, I guess, with the Army.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all about logistics of packing up and moving out.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting all the personnel and all the machinery and all the supplies and everything, putting it into motion and moving on to the next thing.
Right.
So it becomes kind of fun and road and you're good at it.
Yes. Amen. So as we wrap up, let's talk a little bit more about what you have going on over there at realestatetherapy.org. And if you want to mention the podcast again or anything else, feel free.
Well, I think at realestatetherapy.org, if you, or, for people who are listening to this, it's a fun read. If you want to get some perspectives on how to think about home, how to think about the transition that you're going through.
Right.
Some of my favorite topics are how, for example, it's your stuff that gets in your way.
So true.
Right.
Yes.
The thing that holds people back the most is their stuff. And there are ways that you can change your thinking about that'll help you get free. So things like that on the blog.
I like that.
And then,
very Buddhist.
Yeah, it's fun to read.
You're talking about attachment detachment.
I am. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're talking about the metaphorical stuff and the stuff, which is, I like that. Okay.
And so I think that's it's great for anybody and for real estate practitioners. I think it's a good thing fun to look at.
Right.
If there are people listening who live in the Bay Area or San Francisco, my kindred sfhomes.com is a great place to go for anything to do with actual real estate.
Right.
And
stay tuned for the podcast.
Yeah, and stay tuned for the podcast, which is, I think our website is mocktailhour.com. Mocktailhour.com, and that's tail with a Tale.
Okay.
But that'll be April before that's launched.
Okay. You know what? We'll link to the show notes when it's live.
Great.
Okay. I love it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for about an hour. This has been a real joy. I appreciate you sharing your story with me.
Thank you, Jeff. It's really been a pleasure to talk with you. And I could keep going, but we'll say goodbye and get back to our self-isolating.
We'll save the best stories for the next time you're on the show. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you, and enjoy your isolation.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.